The world fades into stillness as you begin to drift. How Bedouins survived extreme desert heat. The desert begins where sound disappears. Endless dunes lie under a pale sky, folding and unfolding like waves that have forgotten how to move. In this stillness, the Bedouins live, patient travelers of heat and silence. Their world is drawn in shades of sand, their rhythm guided by the breath of the wind. When the first light of dawn brushes across the horizon, a quiet glow spreads over the tents. The air is cool for a brief, precious hour. Men rise slowly, their shadows long and blue against the dunes. Women tie the woven ropes, pack the tents, prepare the animals. Everything moves gently, deliberately, without rush. The day will be long, and haste has no meaning beneath the sun. Their homes, made of black goat hair, breathe with the weather. The fibers stretch and relax, letting air pass through, then close tightly when rain appears. Inside, the floor is covered with soft rugs and sand-smooth stones, keeping the warmth even when the night turns cold. Here, life is measured not by clocks, but by the changing color of light. They wear robes of pale fabric, drifting with each step like thin sails in a windless sea. The cloth shields them from the burning air, and the long scarves wrap the head in protection and grace. Through narrow folds of fabric, their eyes remain clear, reading the land, reading the wind. At noon, the desert sleeps, every creature hides. The sun presses close to the earth, the horizon trembles. Bedouins rest beneath the low roof of shade, drinking small cups of hot tea that trick the body into cooling itself. Time becomes slow, heavy and distant. When evening comes, the air softens again. Camels rise, shaking the sand from their sides. They move with the calm of old wisdom, carrying water, woven mats, and the memory of direction. Their steps leave a rhythm across the dunes, slow, even, eternal. The Bedouins follow them, silent, confident that the desert will always guide those who listen. In the night, stars return, thousands of them, cold and bright, scattered like salt over a black table. The Bedouins lie on their backs, wrapped in blankets, the sand beneath still warm. Stories are whispered softly, not tales of war or glory, but of winds, wells, and journeys between places that no one else remembers. Each voice fades with the wind. Each pause is a doorway to sleep. They do not conquer the desert, they learn its pulse. They walk where the earth allows, rest when the air grows fierce, and share what little they have. In this quiet understanding lies survival, not through strength, but through harmony. The sand keeps their footprints only for a moment, then folds them away. Tomorrow the same wind will rise again, and the same lives will begin anew. Somewhere deep in the silence, the desert breathes, slow, steady, eternal. And so, as the dunes stretch endlessly into the night, we drift closer to their quiet wisdom. The Bedouins remind us that survival can be gentle, that strength can be found in softness, and that calm is not weakness but balance. Their world may seem far away, a landscape of dust and distance, yet it carries the rhythm of something familiar, the human wish to belong to the earth. In this calm expanse, nothing is wasted. Every drop of water, every breath of shade, every echo of hoof or footstep holds value. It is a life reduced to essentials, stripped of noise and need. What remains is purity. The meeting of body, land, and wind. Now let the mind slow down. Let the heat of the day dissolve into the cool breath of evening. Imagine the gentle hum of wind brushing over the dunes, the low murmur of a camel's breath, the soft rustle of fabric in the still air. You are not rushing anywhere. You are simply here, resting where history sleeps. And from this quiet beginning, we step into the story of how the Bedouins for centuries learned not to fight the desert's heat, but to move with it, one calm heartbeat at a time. The Bedouins and the breath of the desert. The desert begins before the dawn does, long before the first line of gold cuts through the horizon. It stretches beyond sight, a quiet sea of pale dunes breathing beneath a thin sky. There is no rush here, no weight of clocks or cities, only the slow unfolding of light over endless sand. The air trembles gently, filled with the scent of dust and sunlight. Even in stillness, the desert moves. Tiny grains sliding, whispering, rearranging themselves in patterns no one can name. Every hill of sand is new and ancient at once, each curve shaped by the same wind that has passed here for centuries. The world feels reduced to its simplest form: sand, wind, sky, and light. At dawn, the horizon blushes faintly, a quiet pink that fades into gold. The sun rises without sound, soft but absolute, turning the dunes into rippling waves of warmth. The air shivers and expands, the ground begins to glow, and the silence deepens. There is beauty here, but not the kind that shouts. It is the beauty of endurance, of stillness that has learned how to breathe. Among these shifting lands, the Bedouins have lived for generations. People who understand the desert not as an enemy, but as a companion. They do not rush against it. They move with it, following the rhythm of wind and season, trusting the instinct that only time and patience can teach. They know that survival here is not about strength, but balance. To live in the desert is to listen, to notice how the air cools before dawn, how the sand darkens before rain, how the stars lean slightly toward the direction of water. Their lives are drawn in wide circles, never hurried, never fixed. The Bedouin way is the art of gentle persistence. They travel across distances that others cannot measure, guided by patterns of stars and memories of trails invisible to the untrained eye. When they stop, they do not build walls. They raise tents that can breathe, homes that can vanish by morning, leaving nothing but a soft trace upon the land. Their existence is temporary by design, yet deeply rooted in the memory of the desert. Their tents, called Beit al-Sha'ar, are woven from the dark hair of goats, strong, flexible, alive. When the air is dry, the fibers loosen, letting the wind slide through. When rain appears, they tighten, sealing the home from water. Each strand of hair carries the scent of earth and smoke, each knot tied with the memory of a journey. The tent is not just shelter, it is a breathing space between human and horizon. Inside, shadows ripple softly across woven rugs. The air is cool and dim, shaped by care and understanding. Here, families gather, share food, and rest while the sun burns beyond the fabric walls. The sound of the wind outside becomes part of the room, a gentle hum that reminds them they are safe, even in the heart of vastness. Life in the Beit al-Sha'ar is not hurried. It follows the same slow rhythm as the dunes themselves. Women spin and weave, Men tend to animals or scout the horizon. Children play quietly, tracing lines in the sand that vanish as soon as the wind passes. Everything here is designed for motion. Not chaos, but graceful movement. Nothing is permanent, yet everything has purpose. The Bedouin people dress as the desert demands, long, flowing garments that blur the line between air and fabric. Pale colors reflect the sun, soft textures let the wind slip through. Each robe shields the body without trapping heat. Each scarf wrapped across the face guards against sun and sand alike. The cloth moves like mist, swaying gently with each step, hiding the sharpness of form, softening every movement. From afar, they look like drifting shadows, slow and deliberate. The scarf in the keffiyeh is more than protection. It is a quiet symbol of harmony with the land. It catches the scent of the day, the warmth of the fire, the faint salt of sweat and wind. Through the folds, only the eyes remain visible, calm, alert, reflecting the wide horizon. Those eyes read more than what they see. They measure distance by the shape of light, they know the time by the weight of heat, and they find direction not from compasses, but from the angle of the wind. In this landscape, movement is a language. To walk is to think, to pause is to understand. Every step must be chosen with care. Every direction carries consequence. The Bedouin way of travel is neither fast nor slow. It is measured, economical, deliberate. In the morning, they rise before the sun fully climbs when the air is still soft. The camels, calm and patient, wait beside the tents, their eyes half closed, their bodies swaying slightly with the rhythm of breath. Saddles are placed, ropes are tied, and soon the caravan begins to move. They travel in silence. The sound of hooves on sand is gentle, like a heartbeat fading into the wind. The air grows brighter, the light sharper. As the sun climbs, their shadows shorten until they almost disappear. By midday, heat becomes a living thing. It hums, it blurs the horizon, it presses against the skin. This is the hour of stillness. The travelers stop, unroll their mats and rest beneath the low cover of shade. The camels kneel, lowering themselves to the ground, their long necks folding gracefully. The Bedouins pour tea, strong, dark, fragrant, and drink it slowly, one sip at a time. The warmth of the tea helps the body adjust, persuading it to sweat, to cool itself gently from within. The desert teaches patience in every form. During the hottest hours, time seems to vanish. There is no thought of arrival, no anxiety of delay. The world is suspended in light. The wind hums softly over the dunes, creating patterns that vanish as soon as they form. The sand glitters faintly, each grain catching the sun like a secret star. And then, as the day begins to fold back into evening, movement returns. Quiet, certain, calm. When the light softens and the air turns gold, the Bedouins rise again. They travel until twilight, when the horizon cools into shades of blue and violet. The camels walk with gentle certainty, each step leaving a pattern that the wind will erase by morning. Behind them, the sky burns low, and in the distance, the first stars begin to appear. As night descends, the temperature falls, the air becomes thin and kind, the tents rise once more, the fires flicker alive, and the scent of smoke mingles with the dry sweetness of sand. Around the fire they share food, bread baked in the embers, dates and warm milk. Their voices are low, their laughter soft. Stories flow easily, not to teach or warn, but simply to remember. The stars listen in silence. When the flames dim and the last embers fade to red, the desert becomes infinite again. The Bedouins lie back on their blankets, eyes open to the sky. The world above them is endless, a dome of silver light, untouched and pure. The sand beneath them still holds the warmth of the day. Between the two, they sleep, balanced between fire and starlight. The desert continues its quiet breathing. The wind moves, the dunes shift, and the night hums with an ancient calm. Here, history feels close, not as words or dates, but as rhythm. A steady pulse that has never stopped. The Bedouins belong to that rhythm. They live within it, carried by it, unchanged and eternal. And as the stars drift slowly westward, the desert exhales once more, soft and endless, a gentle heartbeat beneath the sleeping sky. Bedouin life among the sands and winds. The desert begins to breathe long before the sun appears. A pale shimmer lies across the dunes, a veil of silver dust waiting for light. The air is cool and dry, filled with the faint hum of wind moving through grains of sand. From the edge of this silence, a caravan begins to stir. Figures rise slowly, wrapped in soft fabric that sways with every breath. Around them, camels kneel in patient stillness. Silent giants of the desert, the first and last companions of every Bedouin path. The camel is not merely an animal here, it is endurance made flesh, a vessel of patience, its broad feet spread gently on the sand, never sinking too deep. Its long lashes guard its eyes from dust, and its hum, low and resonant, echoes through the stillness like a lullaby. It carries not only people but memory of roots traced through the dunes, of wells half hidden beneath the wind. When the Bedouin walks beside his camel, he walks with trust, for both have learned to read the same landscape. The camel gives milk, warm and sweet, a meal for body and spirit. In its shadow, the Bedouin rests during the long noon, the animal's bulk forming a moving wall of shade. Together they share the rhythm of the desert, step by slow step, heartbeat by heartbeat. The heat grows as the day unfolds, the air trembles. From a distance, mirages rise like floating lakes, glimmering illusions that melt away when approached. The Bedouin knows not to chase them. Instead, he watches the direction of the wind, the flight of birds, the texture of the sand. Water in this world is not found by chance. It is remembered, guarded in maps of the mind. A dark line of plants at the horizon, a cooler draft of air, a sudden bend in the dunes. Each whisper hints at a hidden well. The Bedouins have passed these signs from one generation to another, quietly, like sacred codes of survival. When they reach a well, the sound of water breaking the silence feels like music. The camels lower their heads, drinking slowly. The people collect what they can. Not much, just enough. Every drop is treasured. Water is not a gift to waste, it is life itself. In their camps, it is stored in clay jars or leather skins kept cool beneath shade. They pour it sparingly with the same reverence others give to gold. To share water is to share existence. When a stranger comes from far away, the first thing offered is always a drink. It is a law unspoken, kindness carved into the dust of generations. As the sun leans west, the desert softens, shadows grow long, and the air loses its sharpness. Fires are lit with dry wood and small coals, and the evening meal begins. Their food is simple, but it holds the warmth of care. Camel milk foams in small bowls, its sweetness mixed with the salt of the day. Dates, dark and sticky, bring a hint of comfort, their sugars restoring strength. Flatbread, baked on heated stones, breaks easily in the hand. Every flavor feels clean, honest, touched by smoke and sun. There is no excess here, only what is needed, and nothing more. Sometimes the wind turns wild, a whisper becomes a roar, a horizon vanishes behind a wall of dust. The desert reminds its people of its power. When a sandstorm comes, there is no panic. Movements become careful and calm. The Bedouins wrap their scarves across their faces, covering every inch of skin. They lower the tents, anchoring them with rope and stone. The camels kneel and close their eyes, waiting. And the people wait too, lying close to the earth, feeling its steady heartbeat beneath them. The wind howls, but they do not fight it. They let it pass, knowing that resistance is useless here. When the storm finally fades, the world is changed. The dunes are new, reshaped, yet life resumes as if nothing had happened. That is the Bedouin way, never against the desert, always with it. When darkness arrives, the desert exhales. The heat escapes into the open sky, and the stars descend like a silver river. The tents glow faintly from within, a pulse of quiet life surrounded by infinity. After the meal, they rest. The night is long and kind. The Bedouins lie on woven rugs, heads tilted back to the heavens. The sand beneath them is still warm, the breeze above them cool. Some close their eyes at once, others watch the constellations shift slowly across the sky. In that silence, there is no loneliness, only the soft hum of crickets, the breathing of camels, and the memory of the wind. Sleep comes gently, like a tide. Before rest, stories rise, spoken not to fill the night, but to honor it. Around small fires, voices drift like smoke. An elder begins, his tone slow and steady, carrying the weight of centuries. He tells of journeys long ago, of wells that vanished, of ancestors who followed the same paths now buried beneath new dunes. The children listen in silence, their eyes reflecting flame and wonder. These stories are not just entertainment, they are maps of meaning. Through them, memory survives, not written, but lived. Every story is a thread, weaving generations together, ensuring that even when footsteps fade, the knowledge remains. As the night deepens, conversations soften. The fire crackles, the wind cools, and the last words dissolve into the air. The desert seems to listen, stretching endlessly in all directions, quiet and aware. The camels rest with folded legs, their shapes dark against the sand. The tents stand still, their edges whispering in the breeze. And above, the stars watch without blinking, constant, patient, ancient. Life here has no hurry. The Bedouins move at the pace of the world itself. They do not seek to dominate the desert, nor to escape it. Instead, they live as part of it, breathing when it breathes, sleeping when it sleeps. Their strength lies not in force, but in understanding. The desert changes each day, dunes rise, winds shift, paths disappear. But the Bedouins remain steady, adapting without fear, following the quiet wisdom that the land teaches to those who listen. When morning comes again, the first light spills gently over the dunes. The wind has erased yesterday's tracks, leaving a clean surface, ready for another journey. Camels rise, stretching, their silhouettes framed against the sun. The people pack their tents, fold their rugs, and move forward, calm, unhurried, eternal. And as the horizon swallows their figures, the desert breathes once more, slow and silent. Nothing breaks the peace, nothing hurries the day. In every step, in every pause, the Bedouins live in harmony with the only truth the desert ever offers. That life is not a battle against the world, but a gentle rhythm shared with it. The journey of Hurrem Sultan. In the vast tapestry of time, there are moments that seem to shimmer quietly, threads of gold hidden within darker cloth. One such thread begins in the heart of the Ottoman Empire, a world of domes and minarets, of soft lamps flickering in endless corridors, of voices carried by the echo of marble halls. The empire stretched like a breath across 3 continents, its heart beating in the great city of Istanbul, where sea and sky met in a gentle blue haze. Within the walls of the Topkapi Palace, life moved in hushed rhythm. Gardens spilled with jasmine and water lilies, fountains whispered in shaded courtyards, silk curtains trembled softly in the afternoon wind. This was the seat of power, yet also a world of silence, the world of the harem, where women from faraway lands lived behind carved screens, waiting for fortune to turn in their favor. The harem was not merely a place of rest, it was a universe of its own, a place of etiquette, politics, whispers, and dreams. Each gesture, each glance could shift the tide of destiny. It was here, amid the polished marble floors and perfumed air, that a young woman from the cold north arrived, a stranger in a golden cage. Her name would later be known as Hurrem Sultan, but once she was simply a girl from a distant village, taken by fate and brought into a world far from the snows she once knew. Her journey began in sorrow, but destiny had chosen her for something extraordinary. She came from the lands that breathed frost, where rivers froze in winter and forests whispered under falling snow. Her hair caught the light like copper. Her laughter was said to warm even the coldest air. But when she was taken captive, her world shattered. The path that brought her south was long and uncertain, across plains and seas, until she reached the empire's glittering heart. When the palace gates closed behind her, she stepped into another life. One ruled not by the open sky, but by the soft, shimmering prison of silk. In the harem, time moved differently. Days melted into one another like drops of honey. The women, from every corner of the empire, learned to survive through silence and grace. Music echoed faintly through long halls, teachers recited verses of poetry, tailors stitched bright patterns into fine fabric. Every sound was delicate, every movement refined. Yet beneath this beauty lay a quiet tension. The harem was also a battlefield where alliances and rivalries bloomed like invisible flowers. Hurrem, unlike others, carried something unusual within her, a kind of brightness that refused to fade. Her laughter broke through the heavy air, her curiosity never dimmed. She watched, she listened, she learned. Her words were gentle, yet sharp when they needed to be. Servants whispered that she had fire in her heart, not the fire that burns, but the kind that glows steadily, guiding her through the labyrinth of palace life. When Sultan Suleiman first noticed her, the encounter did not shake the earth, nor was it marked by spectacle. It was quiet, as all great shifts are. A glance, perhaps, or a simple exchange of words in the soft light of evening. He, the ruler of an empire, the poet-king whose thoughts shaped armies and dreams alike, found himself drawn to the warmth of her spirit. There was no calculation in her gaze, no rehearsed grace, only calm, intelligent presence. Their connection deepened in the way rivers meet the sea, naturally, inevitably. In her presence, the Sultan found something rare, not fear, not flattery, but understanding. She spoke with ease where others hesitated, and her laughter seemed to melt the weight of rule that hung around his shoulders. Slowly, what began as curiosity became trust, and what began as trust grew into something neither of them had expected. Companionship woven through the golden stillness of the harem. Hurrem's name, meaning the cheerful one, became her truth. She brought light into places long accustomed to shadows. The harem, once a chamber of silence, began to echo with her laughter. The other women watched her rise, first as a favored companion, then as a trusted confidant. Yet her ascent was not sudden. It was the work of quiet patience, of listening more than speaking, of waiting for the right moments to reveal her wisdom. Suleiman, who wrote poetry under the name Muhibi, often described love as a flame that burns yet never consumes. In Hurrem, he found that flame. Their bond, unlike any before, changed the rhythm of the court. She was not merely his companion in leisure, but his partner in thought. He would speak to her of politics, of philosophy, of matters that no one else dared approach. Her opinions were never loud, never forced, only softly offered, yet deeply considered. Through her calm insight, she began to shape the edges of empire itself. Outside, the world was shifting. The Ottoman armies moved across continents. Envoys arrived with gifts and secrets. The empire stretched wider than any horizon. Yet within the palace, a quieter revolution was taking place, one carried not by soldiers, but by words spoken behind closed doors. Hurrem's influence was not a storm, but a tide. It rose slowly, steadily, until it touched every corner of the Sultan's life. Those who once doubted her began to recognize her mind. She learned languages, studied law, and corresponded with rulers' wives from foreign lands. Her letters were graceful, filled with wisdom and courtesy. She began to support the building of schools, kitchens, and baths, small acts that rippled outward, changing lives far from the palace walls. But in her private world, she remained deeply human. She missed the forests of her youth, the sound of rain on wooden roofs. Yet she had learned to love the sound of the call to prayer, drifting over the city at dawn, the way light touched the domes of the palace each morning. Her life had become a bridge between worlds, between her past and her present, between the wild north and the golden heart of the empire. With Suleiman, she shared not only affection, but purpose. Their conversation stretched into the night, filled with quiet reflection. Sometimes they spoke of art and stars, sometimes of justice and duty. The Sultan would listen as she spoke softly of mercy, of balance, of the fragile line between power and peace. Her influence did not rest on control, but on understanding. In her presence, the ruler of millions found stillness. And in his presence, she found belonging. As seasons passed, her role changed once more. Hurrem was no longer merely the favored one. She became a wife, a rare honor almost unheard of in the empire's traditions. The ceremony was private, but its meaning echoed through history. For the first time, a woman from the harem had stepped beyond its veil, standing beside the Sultan as equal in devotion, if not in rule. Yet she remained as she had always been, calm, deliberate, endlessly patient. Her strength was quiet. Her story was not written in battles or proclamations, but in gestures of kindness, in the way she softened the air around her. She became the whisper behind great decisions, the calm voice amid the storms of state. And when she walked through the gardens of the palace, where the air was thick with the scent of roses and orange blossoms, she would sometimes pause to listen. To the fountains, to the distant hum of the city, to the faint rhythm of life itself. The empire outside roared with ambition, but within her there was only peace. The journey of Hurrem Sultan was never one of conquest, but of transformation. From the snows of the north to the marble corridors of Istanbul, she carried the same flame, quiet, steady, eternal. She changed not only her fate, but the shape of history, simply by being what the desert wind teaches all who listen, gentle, patient, and unstoppable. The influence and legacy of Hurrem Sultan. The palace of Topkapi, with its gardens of jasmine and carved marble fountains, seemed eternal. Yet within its serene walls the world shifted in quiet, deliberate ways. Among those who shaped its rhythm was Hurrem Sultan, whose presence lingered like fragrance in the air long after she was gone. Her laughter once filled the harem, her thoughts once echoed through the chambers where emperors made decisions. Now, centuries later, her influence drifts like soft dust in the light, subtle, undeniable, and timeless. In a world ruled by men, her voice was a whisper that moved mountains. She was not the loud command of an army, nor the echo of public decree, but something far gentler and more enduring, the kind of influence that reshapes the very air without breaking its stillness. Through patience and intelligence, she became more than a companion to Sultan Suleiman. She became his mirror, his listener, his equal in thought. Suleiman the Magnificent ruled an empire that stretched from the gates of Vienna to the deserts of Arabia. His word could move ships and armies, redraw borders, and decide the fate of nations. Yet even he, in his immense power, sought the quiet counsel of one who understood more than policy, one who understood the heart. Hurrem spoke little in public. Her voice was reserved for the privacy of their shared chambers. There, behind silken curtains and soft lamps, she would listen as he weighed the burdens of rule. Her words came slowly, measured like drops of water into fire. Through her, compassion found its way into decisions of power. She reminded the Sultan that strength without mercy is hollow, that the empire's grandeur must rest upon care for its people. Her influence did not roar. It drifted gently, guiding the course of policy in ways unseen. Ministers would later notice how certain decrees softened in tone, how aid reached places once neglected, how conflicts were avoided through careful diplomacy. They could not name the source, but those within the palace knew. It was the steady hand of Hurrem shaping destiny with silence. She was the first of her kind to hold such sway, not by title, but by trust. Through her wisdom, she redefined what a woman could be in the Ottoman world. Before her, the harem had been a secluded sanctuary. After her, it became a place where influence quietly bloomed. Her voice, though wrapped in silk, carried through the corridors of empire, marking the beginning of what would one day be known as the Sultanate of Women. Yet, Hurrem's power was never for her alone. She believed that compassion must reach beyond the palace walls. Using her resources and favor, she began projects that would touch lives far from the gaze of courtly politics. She ordered the construction of mosques, schools, and soup kitchens, places where the poor could eat, the weary could rest, and the orphaned could find shelter. In Istanbul, she built the Haseki Hürrem Sultan complex, a grand foundation of faith and charity. Within its walls, the hungry were fed daily, travelers found refuge, and children learned to read the words of knowledge. Her hands never held the tools, but her mind built each stone with intention. She chose architects, oversaw designs, and filled her projects with gardens where flowers softened the austerity of stone. The buildings still stand today, the marble still cool beneath the sun, the fountains still whispering. Each structure is more than a monument. It is a heartbeat that continues centuries after her own had ceased. To Hurrem, the act of giving was not an obligation of wealth, but a rhythm of balance. The empire's grandeur meant little if its people were forgotten. Through her works, she ensured that kindness became part of Ottoman legacy. Her example would inspire generations of royal women after her to build, to educate, to serve. In this way, her spirit expanded beyond the harem, touching places where her name was never spoken, but her kindness was felt. Yet beneath the public acts of generosity, her private world remained intimate and human. She was a mother, fiercely protective, tender and wise. Her children were her second empire, her legacy in flesh and spirit. Each carried the weight of expectation, each a thread in the delicate web of palace succession. She taught them not only to rule, but to listen, to read the signs of the heart as carefully as the signs of power. Her bond with her sons was strong, though history remembers the conflicts that shadowed their paths. Within the gilded peace of the palace, politics never truly slept. Rivalries flared quietly, hidden behind polite smiles and silken drapes. Hurrem understood this world too well, the delicate, dangerous balance between ambition and loyalty. She moved through it like moonlight, touching everything, illuminating nothing directly. Even so, whispers surrounded her. Some praised her brilliance, others accused her of manipulation. To those who feared a woman's voice, she was too influential, too close to the Sultan's heart. Stories spread through the courts of Europe, painting her alternately as enchantress or queen, as schemer or saint. Yet truth, as always, lay somewhere in the stillness between. Hurrem's power was not born of deceit, but of trust. The rare, unspoken understanding between two souls bound by both affection and intellect. She was judged by her century, as all women of consequence are, measured not only by what she did, but by what others believed she must have done. Yet even among her detractors there was reluctant respect. They could not deny her intellect, nor her courage to act within a world that had not been designed for her voice. As years passed, her influence did not fade. Even after her death, the institutions she founded continued to serve. Her letters, preserved in archives, still breathe with warmth and intelligence. In them, she writes not as a ruler's consort, but as a human being, gentle, articulate, aware of the fragile balance between love and power. Her words reveal her grace more than any rumor could conceal it. To the people of her time, Hurrem was many things: a mystery, a power, a story whispered in markets and courts alike. Some saw her as a light of compassion, others feared the quiet authority that surrounded her. Yet across centuries, her image has softened like the edges of a painting touched by time. She stands now as a symbol of transformation, of how kindness can be powerful, and how intelligence can change the course of empires without raising a voice. In the gardens she once walked, the roses still bloom in early spring. The domes she commissioned still glimmer at dusk, catching the same sunlight that once fell across her silken sleeves. The city hums around her memory, ferries crossing the Bosphorus, the call to prayer rising through the mist. And somewhere in that air, her presence lingers, not as legend, but as warmth woven into the rhythm of Istanbul itself. Her life, which began in captivity and ended in reverence, is the quiet arc of resilience. She did not conquer with armies, nor did she seek thrones. Instead, she built bridges between hearts, between classes, between the grandeur of rule and the gentleness of mercy. In the end, history remembers her not for scandal or myth, but for the calm she brought into a turbulent age. Hurrem Sultan remains even now, a whisper that moves through the corridors of time, not loud, but eternal. Her story is a lullaby of strength disguised as grace, of influence worn like silk, invisible, soft, and unyielding. And as night settles over the domes of the old city, the wind carries her name once more, not as a call, but as a sigh, blending into the timeless breath of the empire she helped to shape. Byzantine marriage, the structure of society and the ritual of union. In the heart of an empire built on light and marble, where gold mosaics shimmered under candle glow and hymns rose through endless domes, life in Byzantium flowed like a slow river, measured, deliberate, and full of ritual. The city of Constantinople stood between two worlds, its air woven from sea salt, incense, and memory. From its high walls one could watch the morning mist rising from the Bosphorus, the water glinting softly beneath the sun's first breath. This was a world where faith, tradition, and hierarchy intertwined to form a delicate web. Every life placed within an order, every gesture weighted with meaning. Society revolved around family, rank, and reputation. To be Byzantine was to belong, not as an individual dreamer, but as a thread in the empire's grand tapestry. Men carried the names of their fathers, women carried the honor of their households. And among all the bonds that held this world together, marriage was the most sacred. Not just a personal vow, but a reflection of the empire's own harmony. A Byzantine family was not merely a cluster of kin, it was a living institution, a fortress of lineage and status. Every home, from the humblest courtyard to the marble halls of nobility, was bound by duty and devotion. Within its walls, generations coexisted, elders advising, mothers teaching, daughters learning the unspoken language of grace. The sound of daily life echoed gently, the rustle of silks, the creak of wooden floors, the distant toll of church bells. Order, above all, was cherished. For those of noble blood, marriage was never only the joining of two hearts. It was the weaving of two destinies. In Byzantium, love was a quiet luxury, secondary to alliance. A marriage was a treaty in silk, a negotiation between families whose power rested on the delicate balance of loyalty and influence. The union of two houses could strengthen a position at court, secure a title, or ensure peace between rival clans. And yet, within those arrangements, tenderness often bloomed, not of passion's fire, but of steady warmth. The Byzantines saw marriage as the art of endurance, a lifelong rhythm of patience and balance. A husband was expected to lead, to protect, to preserve family honor. A wife was expected to guide the home, to guard virtue, and to raise heirs who would carry the name forward. Together they formed the smallest reflection of the empire itself, man as guardian, woman as grace, both bound by faith and ceremony. The path to such a union began not with love, but with arrangement. The engagement, or engesis, was the first step. A formal agreement made between families, often before the bride and groom had even spoken to one another. It was not a moment of romance, but of solemnity. Two families would meet under the watchful eyes of witnesses, priests, and elders. Words were exchanged, oaths were made, hands were joined not in affection, but in promise. The engesis was as binding as law. Once given, the word of union could not be easily undone. Gifts were exchanged, not tokens of sentiment, but symbols of alliance. A ring of gold, a piece of fine fabric, perhaps a carved icon of saints, each item carrying layers of meaning. To outsiders, these objects might seem simple. To the Byzantines, they were living symbols of honor, faith, and continuity. Preparations for the marriage itself could last weeks, sometimes months. Servants moved through the halls with quiet haste, arranging silks and candles, washing ivory floors with rose water. The air was filled with scent, honey, resin, and the faint aroma of burning myrrh. Musicians rehearsed the melodies that would later float through the ceremony, soft as twilight. And beneath all this grandeur lay the question of the dowry. In Byzantium, a dowry was not a token of affection, but a foundation of security, both financial and political. It was the bride's inheritance, her family's promise, and her husband's responsibility. The amount was carefully measured, written into contracts sealed with wax and witness. Lands, coin, fine cloth, or even servants could be part of the offering. A dowry could elevate a family's standing or save another from decline. But beyond the numbers and ledgers, the dowry held a quieter meaning. It was the bridge of trust between two worlds. A father offered it not as loss but as gift, a fragment of his house carried into another. In the evenings before the ceremony, mothers and aunts would prepare the bride's chest, layering embroidered linens, gold-threaded veils, and small tokens of blessing. Each piece carried whispers of ancestry, a silent wish for happiness. As the wedding day approached, the rhythm of the household changed. There was movement, yet no rush, everything done with ritual precision. The bride would spend her final days in quiet seclusion, surrounded by the women of her family. They would brush her hair, bathe her in scented oils, and wrap her in garments of white and gold. She would listen to their stories, of love endured, of patience rewarded, of the strength required to live gracefully within the bounds of tradition. Outside, the streets stirred with anticipation. Vendors sold fresh figs and honey cakes. Children watched as carriages rolled past, carrying guests in robes of deep crimson and blue. In the grand homes of the nobility, candles were lit by the hundreds, their light trembling across mosaics and silver icons. Servants draped walls with embroidered cloth, while musicians tuned their instruments, plucking soft, wandering notes that filled the air with calm. On the morning of the ceremony, the city seemed to pause. Bells rang across Constantinople, their echoes falling into the sea. The bride, her face half-veiled, stood beside her family. Her jewelry glimmered faintly, not as display but as memory, each piece a link in the long chain of heritage. The groom, waiting at the church, wore garments of silk and wool, marked by the crest of his house. When the procession began, the crowd fell silent. The air shimmered with the sound of steps, slow, measured, almost meditative. Every movement carried meaning, the lifting of the veil, the offering of candles, the joining of hands beneath the priest's blessing. The ceremony itself, like all things Byzantine, was both sacred and symbolic, a blending of the earthly and the divine. As chants rose through the church's golden arches, the couple stood beneath crowns of delicate metal, bound together by a ribbon of white cloth. This was the Stephana, the crowning ritual, where husband and wife became king and queen of their new household. The ribbon that joined them symbolized unity, endurance, and the shared weight of life. The crowns themselves, shimmering faintly under candlelight, were not trophies of power, but circles of commitment. When the ritual ended, the crowd exhaled. Incense drifted upward in pale curls, the choir's voices softened into silence. Outside, the couple stepped into sunlight, greeted by petals thrown from the hands of children. It was done. Two families, once separate, now shared one destiny. In the evening that followed, the city glowed with celebration. Tables overflowed with bread, fruit, and sweet wine. Music wove through laughter and the clinking of cups. Dancers moved slowly, their gestures graceful as the flight of doves. The bride and groom sat side by side, not yet lovers, but companions at the threshold of something larger than themselves. Around them, the empire itself seemed to breathe, ancient, ordered, eternal. Marriage in Byzantium was not a story of passion, but of harmony. It was the binding of names, the balancing of worlds. In it lay the essence of the empire's spirit, disciplined, reverent, and enduring. And as night deepened over Constantinople, The last of the wedding candles burned low, their flames flickering against the marble walls like the heartbeat of a civilization that believed, above all, in order, beauty, and the quiet strength of union. Life after the Byzantine wedding. The echoes of celebration still lingered in the air. In the great city of Constantinople, the night after a wedding shimmered with warmth, the glow of candles reflected on mosaic walls, the faint perfume of roses drifting through marble corridors. The empire seemed to pause for a moment, caught between ceremony and dawn, between promise and the quiet beginning of new life. A Byzantine wedding was never just a union of two hearts. It was the closing of one ritual and the opening of another, a continuation of order, a reaffirmation of faith. Though the vows had been spoken, the crowns removed, and the incense faded, the story of the marriage had only just begun. In the gentle morning after the ceremony, the garments of gold and silk lay folded like relics of another world. The bride's crown rested beside her veil, its metal cool to the touch, its meaning heavy with devotion. These were not simple ornaments, they were symbols, tokens of unity, of endurance, of shared purpose. The Byzantine crown, the Stephana, was both halo and bond, two circles connected by a single ribbon, signifying that the husband and wife were now joined not only before men, but before eternity. The attire of the bride reflected both purity and grace. Her robes shimmered in shades of ivory and faint rose, embroidered with threads of silver. Around her wrists hung delicate bangles, each chiming softly when she moved. The groom, solemn yet serene, wore garments of deep blue, trimmed with gold, the color of the sea and the empire. Together they resembled figures from a mosaic, timeless, balanced, part of something larger than themselves. The ceremony itself had ended with solemn joy. As the priest pronounced his blessings, the couple had taken their first steps together around the altar, holding hands, walking 3 times in a slow circle, a dance of faith and partnership. Around them, candles flickered like small suns, their light merging with the scent of myrrh that hung in the air. The choir's voices rose and fell like the tide, their harmonies gentle, endless. The moment felt eternal, suspended between heaven and earth. When the procession left the church, petals scattered by children marked the path toward their new home. The streets were alive with quiet festivity, laughter, music, the clinking of goblets, the hum of distant bells. Yet beneath the surface joy lay a profound stillness, the understanding that what had been joined this day was not only 2 people, but 2 legacies, 2 worlds of duty intertwined. That night, beneath the soft canopy of their chamber, the newlyweds began the second part of their union, the private, quiet ritual that followed every Byzantine wedding. The bridal chamber was a sanctum of peace. Its air carried the fragrance of jasmine and warm oil. Its lamps glowed low, bathing the room in amber light. Outside, the city was hushed, save for the faint sound of oars in the harbor and the distant call of night birds. Within, the couple shared their first silence together, a silence more meaningful than any word. The night was not about passion's flame, but about the gentle acknowledgement of belonging. The marriage, once a promise made before God and society, was now sealed in intimacy, a sacred confirmation that the vows spoken under the church's golden dome would live in the quiet breath of ordinary life. From that moment, their union was officially recognized. In Byzantine law and tradition, the consummation of marriage was not merely personal, it was symbolic. It marked the completion of a covenant that carried legal, social, and spiritual weight. The 2 souls, now one in the eyes of all, became the foundation of a new household, a small kingdom reflecting the empire's order and harmony. Life after the wedding unfolded in patterns that were centuries old. The bride, now a wife, assumed her place within the rhythm of domestic life. Her mornings began with prayer and the tending of household affairs. She oversaw servants, kept records of stores and cloths, and ensured that everything within the home reflected dignity and discipline. Though her world was private, it was far from idle. The Byzantine wife was guardian, manager, teacher, and peacekeeper, her influence reaching quietly into every corner of family life. Her husband's responsibilities stretched outward into the world of trade, politics, or the imperial court. Yet even as he stood among men, his household remained a reflection of his name, and his wife, its heart. The strength of a Byzantine family lay not in wealth alone, but in unity. To outsiders, she might have seemed still and silent, but within her own realm, her word was law. She governed through calmness, her authority woven into kindness and restraint. Marriage shaped identity, but it also shaped destiny. A noblewoman's social standing often rose with her husband's, yet her conduct could elevate or diminish an entire lineage. Respect, modesty, and wisdom were virtues held in equal esteem. A woman's grace was a family's pride, her misstep, its sorrow. Thus, every gesture, every decision was guided by tradition and care. Children, when they came, completed the circle. The birth of a child was celebrated not with grand feasts, but with blessings whispered over the cradle. A son ensured the continuation of name and estate. A daughter promised new alliances and new beginnings. Mothers taught their daughters the ways of the home, passing down recipes, hymns, and virtues. Fathers taught their sons honor, service, and the value of restraint. The cycle continued, generation after generation, as constant as the tide that touched the shores of the Bosphorus. In the quiet years that followed a marriage, the bond between husband and wife deepened in silence. The first excitement faded, replaced by something steadier: companionship. They prayed together, dined together, endured together. Their love was not a fire to be admired, but a lamp to be tended, small, persistent, essential. The Byzantine household itself mirrored the empire's structure. Just as the emperor ruled with justice and balance, so did a husband govern his home with measured authority. Yet the empress, like the wife, shared his rule through counsel, not command. Harmony was the ideal, every part in its place, every soul fulfilling its duty. Socially, marriage was a mark of legitimacy. It transformed status, binding two families in alliance and ensuring continuity of name and fortune. For the aristocracy, each marriage was a thread in the intricate fabric of politics, forming networks of loyalty that could shape the empire's course. Even among commoners, marriage provided order, security, and identity. A man without a family was adrift, a woman without marriage, unanchored. Together they formed the smallest yet most enduring unit of Byzantine civilization. And so the household became both refuge and legacy. Within its walls, daily rituals unfolded with quiet grace, the lighting of candles at dusk, the setting of bread and olives upon the table, the murmured prayers before sleep. Life moved gently, guided by faith, custom, and the rhythm of seasons. Years turned like pages, and what began as ceremony became memory. The crowns now kept in chests, the garments folded away, the laughter of wedding guests long faded. Yet the marriage itself endured, not as a moment of grandeur, but as a long, steady symphony of ordinary grace. In Byzantium, family was eternity written in human form. A marriage was never just between two souls, it was the meeting of generations past and those yet to come. The endurance of a name, the inheritance of land, the preservation of faith, all rested upon the quiet strength of those who lived with devotion and patience. And in the end, as the candles burned low and the years drew calm, the couple who once stood beneath golden crowns could look upon their lives and see not splendor, but harmony. Their story, like the empire's, was one of balance, of duty, and of quiet beauty that refused to fade. In the stillness of their home, surrounded by the faint hum of prayers and the warmth of family, the legacy of Byzantine marriage lived on, a gentle rhythm unbroken through time, soft as a lullaby that history never stopped whispering. The Persian Garden, Origins and the Philosophy of Design. Somewhere beyond the edge of the desert, where the horizon glows in gold and dust, there lies a gate half hidden by time. Behind it, the world changes. The air cools, the wind slows. The sound of water replaces silence. You have entered a Persian garden, a place where earth and dream breathe together, where geometry holds the heartbeat of paradise. The story of these gardens begins in the cradle of ancient Persia, in lands where the sun ruled the sky and rain was a distant gift. This was a world of contrasts, mountains brushing clouds, plains rippling with heat, and rivers cutting through the silence like veins of life. To live here was to understand scarcity, to worship balance. And from that understanding came creation, the Paradisa, an enclosed garden, the ancestor of paradise itself. For centuries, Persian kings and poets sought refuge within these walls of order and bloom. The desert outside was vast, endless, untamed. Within the garden, everything was measured, a universe of symmetry, water, and shade. The Persians believed that by shaping a piece of earth into harmony, they mirrored the perfection of creation. Each garden was not merely a place to walk, it was a philosophy made visible, a living map of balance between man and nature. The land itself gave the idea its form. In regions where summers were fierce and rivers scarce, the presence of a single stream could transform everything. The builders of ancient Persia learned to tame water, guiding it through underground channels called qanats. These invisible rivers carried snowmelt from the mountains to distant cities and gardens, allowing life to flourish where none should. Out of this mastery came something deeper than irrigation. It was reverence. To the Persians, water was not just necessity, it was soul. And so the garden became an oasis of order. Within its walls the dry wind softened, trees spread their shade like protection. The scent of jasmine drifted above pools that mirrored the blue of the sky. In this place, man and nature did not compete, they conversed. Every leaf, every stone, every channel of water was placed with intention. Nothing was random, and nothing was wasted. The philosophy that guided these gardens was one of balance. Humanity, in its wisdom, did not dominate nature but sought to live within its rhythm. The Persians saw the world as a reflection of divine geometry. Every angle, every proportion an echo of cosmic order. To design a garden was to write a poem with soil and light, to compose silence as one might compose music. The layout that defined this vision was called Chahar Bagh, literally, 4 gardens. It was the soul of Persian design. Imagine standing at the center of an enclosure where 2 narrow channels of water cross at right angles, dividing the land into 4 equal parts. Each part held trees, flowers, and paths in deliberate symmetry. The meeting point of the waterways and the heart of the garden often held a fountain or a pavilion where sound and shadow met in perfect dialogue. This division of 4 was not just aesthetic, It was symbolic. The Persians saw in it the four elements: water, earth, air, and fire. It also evoked the four rivers said to flow through the eternal paradise of myth: one of milk, one of honey, one of wine, and one of water. In shaping the Chahar Bagh, they were not copying the heavens, they were bringing heaven to earth. At the center, where the channels met, water sang softly over stone. It reflected the sun by day, the stars by night. Around it, the air shimmered with fragrance: roses, lilies, cypress, and orange blossom. Birds came to drink and stayed to sing. And everywhere, the sound of trickling water filled the space with serenity, like a voice reminding all who entered that time could move slowly, that peace could be built by hand. Architecture was never separate from this vision. The Persian garden was both landscape and structure, a conversation between built form and living growth. Pavilions rose with domes that captured light like still pools of air. Their arches framed views that seemed painted by nature itself. Rows of trees aligning perfectly with pathways, reflections dancing across marble. Inside, latticed screens filtered sunlight into shifting patterns as if the building itself were breathing with the rhythm of the day. Water was always the bridge between these worlds. It carried light deeper into the garden, breaking the sun into fragments of gold. It cooled the air, carried reflections, whispered against the stone edges as though telling ancient secrets. The garden's geometry guided it, but its motion remained free, the perfect harmony between design and life. Even the choice of plants was part of the philosophy. The Persians valued endurance, trees that could withstand both heat and time. The cypress, tall and eternal, stood for resilience. The fruit trees for generosity. The rose for fleeting beauty. Together they told a story. Life is both strong and delicate, both enduring and ephemeral. To step into such a garden was to step into a dream made solid. The air felt different here, cooler, slower, touched with scent and silence. The body relaxed before the mind even noticed. The eyes followed lines of symmetry that led naturally toward calm. Every element, sound, fragrance, motion, worked in rhythm to soothe. Visitors often described their first steps into a Persian garden as crossing a threshold into another world. The desert outside might roar with wind and heat, but within these walls, time bent softly. One could hear one's own heartbeat blend with the murmur of the fountains. Even the birds seemed unhurried, their wings stirring the air like small waves. The Persians called this feeling aramesh, tranquility. It was not the absence of sound or motion, but the presence of harmony. In these gardens, people found balance between body and spirit. Scholars read poetry beneath the trees, lovers whispered near the water's edge. Travelers rested drinking tea beneath the shade. Kings dreamed of eternity while listening to the song of water falling upon stone. Light itself played as guest and host. In the morning, it entered gently, sliding through leaves and across white marble paths. At noon, it shimmered upon the pools, turning their surfaces into mirrors of fire. And by evening, as the air cooled, it softened once more, bathing everything in a color between gold and sleep. The architects understood this rhythm. They shaped walls and courtyards to catch the sun's movement like a slow dance. Every hour brought a new face to the same garden, always changing, always the same. To walk in a Persian garden was to walk inside time. The mind loosened its grip. Thoughts drifted like petals upon water. The soul, which elsewhere felt divided, seemed here to come home. There was no beginning or end, only the circular breathing of space and silence. This harmony did not belong to one age or one ruler. It became eternal, From ancient Persia, the idea of the garden spread east and west, carried by travelers, artists, and dreamers. The Chahar Bagh crossed into India, where it blossomed into the Mughal gardens of Agra and Kashmir. It whispered into the courtyards of the Alhambra in Spain, and later into the formal geometry of Versailles. Yet, wherever it went, it carried the same truth: that paradise is not a distant promise, but something that can be built if only one learns how to listen to water, to light, to silence. And so the Persian garden endures. Its walls may crumble, its fountains dry, but the idea remains, an eternal breath of calm drawn between man and nature. It teaches that beauty lies not in excess, but in balance. That to create peace outside, one must first find it within. As you imagine standing there, beneath the soft shade, by the clear stream, you might feel the air move gently against your skin, as if history itself were exhaling. You hear the water's voice, steady and kind. You smell the rose just at the edge of bloom. And in that moment, you understand what the Persians knew so long ago: that the garden is not only a place, but a state of being, a quiet paradise made by human hands, yet born from the longing of the soul. Sound, light, and harmony in the Persian garden. If you listen closely, before even stepping beyond the gates, you can hear it, the faint murmur of water. It moves through stone channels, soft as breath, ancient as memory. The Persian garden begins not with sight, but with sound. It greets the senses slowly, drawing you inward like a voice calling from the distance of centuries. The water is everywhere and nowhere at once. It threads the garden's heart in 4 directions, tracing the cross of balance known as Chahar Bagh. It flows through narrow marble veins, catching sunlight in flashes of silver. Each ripple folds into the next, a language of movement that needs no translation. It does not rush, it does not fall. It glides. The sound is deliberate, unbroken, eternal. To the Persians, this was not mere decoration. The flow of water was the rhythm of life itself. In a world of heat and silence, water became the soul's lullaby. It cooled the air, mirrored the heavens, and whispered stories of mountains far away. The gentle sound of its motion echoed the human heartbeat, steady, soft, patient. It reminded those who listened that peace was not absence, but presence, the quiet music beneath all things. Sometimes it trickled like laughter, sometimes it shimmered with a weightless hush. Beneath cypress trees and rose bushes it curved and turned, a choreography of clarity. When it met stone, it spoke in gentle percussion, a tap, a sigh, a whisper. Each fountain and pool was tuned to the space around it, so that no drop fell without harmony. It was said that in a true Persian garden, even the silence had structure. The air carried this sound as a promise. Wherever you walked, the murmur followed, wrapping you like a song you could not forget. Close your eyes and it became ocean and oasis both, a horizon of calm. In this soundscape, even the harshness of the desert outside dissolved. The garden became a world complete unto itself, where nothing hurried and nothing lacked. And then came the scent, soft, invisible, almost sacred. The fragrance of the Persian garden was its second voice, mingling with the water's song. Roses opened at dawn, their petals damp with dew. Jasmine climbed trellises, releasing sweetness into the morning air. Orange blossoms glowed pale under the sun, their scent drifting between shadows. Each fragrance rose and fell with the breeze, as if the garden itself breathed. To walk among these aromas was to be enveloped in memory. The Persians chose plants not only for beauty, but for meaning, the rose for love, the cypress for eternity, the pomegranate for life and renewal. When the wind moved, these scents mixed like chords of a quiet hymn, layered, balanced, impossibly gentle. The nose became the mind's gate, and through it entered calm. The air itself changed character in the garden. Beyond the walls it was dry, fierce, sun-bitten. Inside it softened, cooled by the water and shaded by trees. It touched the skin differently, tender, deliberate, as if it had learned kindness. The breeze carried with it not dust but whispers, the rustle of leaves, the hush of footsteps, the sigh of fabric against stone. Everything moved in time with everything else, and in that rhythm lay peace. Light, too, had its language here. From sunrise to dusk, the garden was a living canvas. In the early morning, the air shimmered with gold, the pools glowed like liquid amber, the walls caught light like silk. As the day rose, colors deepened. The green of leaves became denser, the white of jasmine almost blinding. Shadows lengthened, painting lines across the paths in quiet geometry. By afternoon, the heat softened into a muted glow. The marble paths reflected light upward, scattering warmth across the arches and domes. The sun became an artist, changing the hues of every surface. What was once green turned silver. What was once bright turned calm. Light and shadow performed their endless duet. Never the same, never apart. And then, as dusk approached, the world exhaled. The garden turned blue, violet, then silver again. Lamps were lit near the fountains, their flames trembling in the water's reflection. The air thickened with scent. Roses, earth, cool stone. Birds returned to their branches, their last songs fading into quiet. Under the first stars, the garden transformed from a place of life into a place of stillness. Night arrived not with darkness, but with softness. This interplay of sound, scent, and light was no accident. It was design, a philosophy of harmony turned into space. The Persian architects believed that beauty must flow like breath, invisible yet essential, structured yet free. They studied how water curved toward shadow, how scent drifted with wind, how light fell upon symmetry. Each garden became a meditation written in elements, earth as stage, water as voice, air as rhythm, and fire as reflection. To sit within such a place was to forget the urgency of time. The outside world seemed far away, reduced to memory. The mind slowed, thoughts thinned until only sensation remained. The sound of water, the scent of orange blossom, the cool of marble beneath the hand. In that quiet, something ancient stirred. The awareness of being small, yet perfectly placed within a vast and ordered whole. The Persians saw this as the highest form of art, to create not for display but for stillness. The garden was not meant to impress the eye but to rest the spirit. It was a retreat for philosophers, poets, and travelers, a space where words dissolved, leaving only presence. Here, one could listen to silence as if it were a language, and find meaning in the shape of a shadow. Even the architecture served contemplation. The walls framed the horizon, not to limit it, but to define it. The arches opened onto pools that mirrored the sky, blurring the boundary between earth and heaven. In the still water, clouds drifted upside down. The viewer, gazing into the reflection, felt themselves suspended, neither above nor below, but within. In such a place, meditation was effortless. The mind, lulled by repetition, the flowing water, the flickering light, began to quiet on its own. Each breath aligned with the garden's pulse. The soul became light, floating somewhere between scent and sound. To linger too long was to forget the body altogether, to dissolve into the balance that surrounded you. This was the hidden purpose of the Persian garden, not just to delight the senses, but to heal them. It offered rest from chaos, a return to equilibrium. The act of entering the garden was itself symbolic, stepping from disorder into order, from noise into rhythm. The moment one crossed the threshold, the world seemed to inhale, and you exhaled with it. And so the garden became more than space. It became time slowed to a whisper. It became a mirror of the human heart, calm, symmetrical, deep. Every element, the water, the wind, the light, worked together to remind you of what the soul had always known, that peace is not found, but remembered. As night deepened, the garden transformed once more. Moonlight settled upon the pools like fine silk. The fountains shimmered quietly, their sound fainter now, as if the water itself had grown sleepy. The fragrance of the flowers softened, and the shadows grew long and blue. Somewhere, a nightingale sang, not loud, but tender, as though singing only for the stars. The visitor who stayed until that hour would feel it, the moment when the garden ceased to be a place and became a state of being. The senses merged, time faded, the sound of water was the sound of breathing, the flicker of lamps, the rhythm of thought. Nothing existed outside this stillness. This was harmony, the quiet perfection the Persians sought to build, and in building, to share. They knew that peace could not be commanded, it could only be invited, and so they shaped their gardens to whisper, not speak, to offer, not demand. The result was a sanctuary that still, after centuries, can slow the pulse of anyone who enters. If you listen closely, you can still hear it now, the faint trickle of water, the sigh of leaves, the breath of the earth as it cools beneath the moon. The Persian garden does not end when you leave it. It lingers in the senses, in the quiet between thoughts. It teaches the art of harmony, to move like water, to shine like light, to rest like shadow. And in that endless balance, somewhere between sound and silence, the garden continues to live, eternal, patient, and full of peace. The influence of the Persian garden on the world. It begins, as all quiet stories do, with water and shade. The Persian garden, that delicate marriage of symmetry and stillness, once rested within the heart of ancient empires, hidden behind high walls of brick and vine. But beauty, even when enclosed, finds a way to wander. Over centuries, the garden's breath moved outward, carried by poets, travelers, architects, and kings. It crossed deserts, oceans, and dynasties, leaving traces of paradise wherever it passed. The story of its journey is a story of the human longing for order, for peace, for the echo of paradise made visible. Every civilization that touched its pattern reshaped it gently, but its soul, that balance between water, earth, and light, never changed. From the Mughal palaces of India to the courtyards of Spain, from the royal symmetry of Versailles to the quiet parks of the modern world, the Persian garden endures, not as imitation, but as inheritance. It was in India that this inheritance first bloomed again in full splendor. When the Mughal emperors crossed from Central Asia into the Indian subcontinent, they carried not only soldiers and artisans, but memories of the Persian landscape. Babur, the first Mughal emperor, longed for the gardens of his homeland, the rivers of Kabul, the orchards of Samarkand. To ease his homesickness, he ordered the creation of the Chaba, a Persian garden reborn in Indian soil. Under the burning Indian sun, these gardens became sanctuaries of green. Water flowed in channels carved with marble, gliding through pavilions of white stone. Trees, mango, cypress, and pomegranate, framed pools where lotus flowers drifted like dreams. The charba was more than pleasure, it was philosophy. It brought the idea of cosmic harmony into the living world, a reminder that even amid heat and dust, serenity could be designed. Later emperors refined this vision. Akbar expanded the concept, blending Persian geometry with Indian imagination. And under Shah Jahan, the garden reached its most ethereal expression. The Taj Mahal. There, the Mughal charba became the threshold between love and eternity. The river Yamuna mirrored its marble domes, while 4 perfect quadrants of green framed the tomb in silent symmetry. To walk through its paths is to walk through the essence of Persian thought, that paradise is not beyond life, but within it. Far away to the west, another echo stirred, in Andalusia, Spain, within the walls of the Alhambra. The Moors, descendants of those who once ruled Persia's neighboring lands, brought with them the same reverence for geometry and water. When they built their palaces above Granada, they shaped courtyards that spoke the same silent language. The Court of the Lions, with its fountain resting upon 12 marble beasts, carried the Persian idea of the universe in balance. Water flowed from the center outward, dividing the courtyard into 4 parts. A design born of the Chahar-Bagh, reborn in Andalusian stone. Yet here the garden became lighter, more intricate, a whisper of lace carved into architecture. Light trembled on tiles of blue and gold, fountains murmured beneath arches like silver threads. At dusk, the Alhambra still hums with that old peace. The air smells faintly of orange blossoms, the water reflects the stars as it once did in Shiraz. Though the Moors are gone, their gardens remain, living testaments to the Persian philosophy that beauty can exist where silence and symmetry meet. From Spain, the idea traveled again, this time northward into the courts of Europe. The Renaissance had already awakened a hunger for order, and the Persian sense of structure found new expression in the grand gardens of France. When Louis XIV commissioned the gardens of Versailles, he did not seek to copy the East, but unknowingly he followed its rhythm. Versailles was vast, commanding, yet beneath its grandeur flowed the same pulse, symmetry, reflection, and the power of controlled water. The fountains of Latona and Apollo, the long canal stretching toward the horizon. These were not Persian by name, but by spirit. The axis, the mirror of sky and water, the geometry of calm, all echoed the ancient Chahar-Bagh. In Versailles, the garden became a stage for light. In Persia, it had been a sanctuary of shade, yet both sought the same truth, that beauty, when ordered, becomes a kind of peace. The idea crossed continents and centuries. Its influence appeared quietly in courtyards from Cairo to Florence, in cloisters, in Mughal forts, in palaces where architects sought balance between structure and soul. Even when translated into new languages of style, the garden's essence persisted, the meeting of opposites, the taming of nature, not by force but by understanding. In time, this philosophy extended beyond walls and dynasties. The geometry of Persian design became part of global thought, an invisible foundation beneath modern landscapes. When city planners drew parks with central fountains and radiating paths, they echoed the old pattern. When architects used water to reflect buildings, they repeated the same ancient gesture. The garden's influence, once royal and remote, had become public, democratic, and universal. Yet what remains most striking is not its form, but its feeling. The Persian garden taught the world that design could hold emotion, that space itself could soothe. In every culture that adopted it, the idea carried with it the same invitation to pause, to breathe, to listen. A garden, however grand, was never meant for spectacle. It was meant for stillness. In today's world of movement and noise, that lesson feels almost sacred. Modern architects still turn to the Persian ideal, not to replicate its style, but to rediscover its soul. They draw from its philosophy of harmony that light, water, and form must exist in dialogue. A modern courtyard with a single pool and tree can carry the same tranquility as the royal gardens of Isfahan if it is built with balance in mind. Even in the steel and glass of contemporary cities, the Persian sense of space endures. Rooftop gardens mirror the ancient Paradisa, enclosed heavens above the chaos below. Public parks borrow the principle of reflection, using pools and symmetry to create calm amid the motion of life. The design of wellness retreats, meditation centers, and ecological landscapes often traces unseen roots back to Persia, to the idea that to care for the land is to care for the spirit. And through it all, one truth remains unchanged. The garden lives only through those who tend it. The Persians understood that harmony was not built once and left to stand. It was cultivated daily. Every drop of water, every leaf, every brick was an act of devotion. To maintain the balance of the garden was to maintain the balance of the soul. Today, gardeners, historians, and artists continue this quiet work. They restore fountains, prune cypress trees, and preserve the geometry of paths that have guided generations. In doing so, they keep alive not only an art form, but a way of seeing, one that values patience over power, simplicity over grandeur, balance over excess. The Persian garden's endurance is proof that true beauty does not age, it breathes. And perhaps that is why, after all these centuries, the idea of the Persian garden still feels so alive. It speaks to a part of us that never stops longing for peace. When we walk beneath trees reflected in still water, when we feel the air cool against stone, when we hear the faint whisper of a fountain at dusk, we are touching the same calm that kings and poets once sought. The Persian garden's influence is not measured in architecture or empire, but in the continuity of that feeling. It is the soft memory of order within chaos, of gentleness within strength. It reminds us that paradise was never meant to be distant. It was always meant to be designed, tended, and shared. So when the wind moves through modern gardens, stirring the surface of ponds and the leaves of trees, it carries more than air. It carries a history of stillness, a lineage of care, of wonder, of balance. It carries the breath of Persia, whispering across centuries that to live beautifully is to live in harmony, and to build paradise is to build peace. The final stillness and harmony. There is a kind of silence that belongs only to the end of stories, the quiet that comes not from absence, but from completion. It is the hush that settles after the wind has moved through the leaves, after the last ripple fades on the surface of water. Somewhere, beneath the soft hum of time, this silence waits, patient, eternal, kind. In the Persian garden, that silence feels alive. It moves with the rhythm of water and shade. It lingers between the scent of rose and the sigh of wind through cypress. Here, stillness is not emptiness, but harmony, a perfect balance between what was built and what simply is. The human hand and the earth's breath meet in agreement. The result is not conquest, but peace. To walk through such a place is to feel history's pulse slow. The paths stretch gently underfoot. The air seems to hold you, not push you. There are no sharp sounds here, no urgency. Only the faint trickle of fountains, the drifting scent of orange blossom, the glimmer of sunlight folded into shade. In the heart of this quiet, something ancient awakens. the recognition that stillness has always been humanity's truest language. The Persian garden, in its calm perfection, is more than architecture. It is a mirror of the soul at rest, an image of what the heart seeks when it forgets to rush. It teaches that beauty is not abundance, but balance, not display, but devotion. The fourfold paths that divide the garden mirror the four directions of life itself: birth, growth, fading, renewal, all meeting at the same quiet center where water glides over stone. From this center, the mind travels outward, gently touching other worlds that once knew the same peace. The Bedouin, for instance, found their stillness not in water, but in sand. For them, the desert was a vast, golden sea of silence, a place where every grain of dust carried memory, where survival depended on listening more than speaking. Their tents, light and dark, breathed with the rhythm of the wind. Their lives followed the pulse of the sun, moving with dawn, resting at noon, walking with dusk. They understood what the Persian gardener would later shape into form, that nature is not to be conquered, but to be trusted. The Bedouin bowed to the heat, respected the horizon, and shared their water as sacred duty. Their nights, spent beneath skies heavy with stars, were filled with stories and calm, a stillness not of luxury, but of belonging. In their simplicity lived the same truth that blooms in every garden. Harmony begins when we stop resisting the world. Far to the west, the Byzantines found peace in order, not the silence of the desert, but the balance of ritual. In their grand halls of marble and mosaic, harmony was built from pattern and precision. Their marriages, their meals, their prayers, all followed rhythms that gave shape to life. To them, structure was serenity, repetition was comfort. And in the soft glow of oil lamps reflected on gold, they too reached for quiet. The kind of peace that hides in ceremony, in the patient symmetry of daily devotion. Then came the Ottomans, heirs of empire and dreamers of elegance. They carried with them the whisper of the East, the same wisdom that once shaped Persian fountains and Andalusian courtyards. Sultan, in her palace of marble and light, understood that beauty must serve compassion and that power without kindness was hollow. Her gardens bloomed with meaning, her foundations fed the poor, her influence moved not by force, but by calm persuasion. Even in the heart of empire, she carried stillness like perfume. Through these civilizations, Bedouin, Byzantine, Ottoman, Persian, runs a single thread, a quiet philosophy shared across centuries, that peace is not found in what we take, but in what we understand. Each culture, in its own way, built sanctuaries of balance, spaces where the noise of life could dissolve into quiet rhythm. The form differed: tents, domes, fountains, courtyards, yet the essence remained the same, the longing for a world in tune with itself. In this way, the Persian garden becomes not a single place, but a symbol. It gathers the wisdom of the desert, the devotion of the temple, the grace of the palace, and turns them into space. Here, architecture breathes, water becomes time, light becomes memory, and the human heart, weary from the weight of history, finds its reflection, whole and untroubled. To sit beside a Persian pool at dusk is to feel this inheritance. The surface of the water mirrors both the sky above and the face that gazes into it. In that reflection, boundaries blur. You are the earth and the sky, the builder and the wanderer, the past and the present. The faint sound of water moving through stone channels becomes the sound of centuries exhaling. You begin to understand that stillness is not something you find, it is something you remember. All great civilizations, in their final wisdom, turn toward quiet. The Bedouin had their horizon. The Byzantines had their icons. The Ottomans had their domes. And the Persians had their gardens, the meeting place of shadow and light. What they all share is an understanding that peace does not come through expansion or conquest, but through surrender. The gentle kind, the kind that bows to the natural rhythm of things. The modern world, restless and bright, often forgets this. We chase movement, noise, and speed. We measure life in minutes instead of moments. Yet the lessons of these ancient worlds remain, whispering through history's corridors. They remind us that true luxury is not gold but time, not possession but presence. To live well is to live slowly, to see clearly, to breathe fully. In this way, the Persian garden is not only a relic of the past, it is a map for the future. It calls us back to simplicity, to the quiet companionship of nature. It asks us to listen again, to water as it folds over stone, to wind as it traces the edges of leaves, to silence as it gathers beneath trees. It invites us to remember that the world, when left in balance, is enough. And so, across centuries, the same ideal continues. In every courtyard, every fountain, every open window through which air and light still wander. The garden teaches that peace cannot be built from noise. It must grow like a tree, slowly and with care. Its roots are patience, its branches understanding, its fruit contentment. The balance between human hands and nature's heart has always been fragile. Yet as long as someone tends a garden, shelters a flame, or listens to the hum of wind through leaves, the connection endures. Civilization itself is nothing more than the desire to bring order to chaos, to create small islands of harmony in a vast, unpredictable world. In the end, perhaps that is what the Bedouins sought beneath the stars, what the Byzantines carved in stone, what Hurrem built in marble, and what the Persians shaped in water, the eternal return to stillness, the same stillness that lives in us, waiting to be heard. When the last fountain quiets and the final light fades from the garden walls, what remains is not emptiness but breath, the soft exchange between earth and air, between past and now. The garden sleeps, yet it lives, carrying in its silence the heartbeat of every hand that once built it, every eye that once admired it, every soul that once found peace within its shade. The world beyond its walls continues to change. Empires rise and fall, voices fill the air, time races forward. But within, beneath the cypress and the stars, the same calm persists. The sound of water still hums, the scent of roses still drifts, the air still moves with grace. And if you stand there long enough, if you breathe slowly enough, you might feel it. That ancient harmony, that unbroken connection between man and nature. It is not loud, it does not demand attention. It simply exists the way light exists, the way love endures. For in the end, all roads, desert paths, marble corridors, garden walkways lead back to this, the quiet unity of being. Humanity, in all its striving and wonder, always finds its way home, to silence, to balance, to the soft meeting point where time and eternity touch. The Persian garden stands as its symbol, timeless, still, and endlessly alive. And in its stillness it reminds us the world's truest harmony has never been lost. It waits, always, in the quiet between breaths. The night grows quiet now, the stories have softened into silence, like ripples fading into calm water. The stars above feel close, familiar. Their light, steady and kind, watching over everything that breathes. You are safe here, surrounded by the hush of history, by the gentle echo of those who once walked through deserts, palaces and gardens, always seeking the same peace that finds you now. Let the air settle around you. Let the mind grow still. Imagine the cool shade of a cypress tree, the soft murmur of a distant fountain, the scent of warm earth after rain. Every sound is slower now, every thought lighter. You are drifting, not away, but inward, toward that quiet space where the heart finally rests. The world outside can wait. Tonight belongs only to calm. You have wandered through centuries, through stories of harmony and light, and you have arrived here, in the soft center of stillness. So breathe slowly. Feel the weight of time loosen and fall away. The wind moves gently through unseen leaves, carrying whispers of peace across the dark. Close your eyes. The garden of night opens for you. The stars are your lanterns, the air your blanket. Sleep, traveler of quiet places. You have reached your paradise. Good night. May your dreams be calm and your heart light as the wind that carries them.